Good afternoon, back again, 30th of June 2024, and it's the first of the speakers now at the NUM Nottinghamshire area 40th anniversary of the miners' strike due, which was last night, and that speaker is Chris Kitchen. He's the current leader of the National Union of Mine Workers, took over from Arthur Scargill. Some pretty big boots to fill there. And the union is like a shadow of what it were. But Chris has stepped up to the breach well, and he's a nice solid type of guy. And like I say, he spoke very well, and they're still fighting on behalf of Mine Workers Pension Scheme, and they'll still see people, you know what I mean, even though like myself, I've not been a member for, Jesus, 30 years. 35 years, something like that, but you know, if I want any sort of assistance, I'll not go to my old union Unison, who I was a member of longer than I were, I'll go and see Chris Kitchen, or Chris Skidmore down in Barnsley. Fine men they are, so happy days. Well done, Chris.
It's an honour to be asked to speak at the NUM Nottinghamshire area anniversary tonight on behalf of the National Union of Mine Workers. It's an honour that a 17-year-old miner of 40 years ago would never have believed possible. 40 years ago, we were faced with an impossible decision to sit back and allow the National Coal Board to systematically close down 20 collieries on economic grounds. Many of us suspected that this would only be the start, or to stand in solidarity with those who were under immediate threat of losing their jobs and asking for our support. I'm proud to say that I was one of many that chose to stand up. From the start, we knew that this was not just an industrial dispute. It was clear by how the strike has been policed that we were not just up against the National Coal Board, we were up against Thatcher's government and all the resources at their disposal. Police roadblocks on the motorway exits, turning round pickets was not something that the National Coal Board could have done without government help. Over the last 40 years, all of our suspicions have been proved to be right with the release of the Cabinet Papers. Recent documentaries and dramatisations have shown that the strike was a vindictive political act planned to destroy our industry, our communities and our union. A plan that once implemented continued over the last 30 years, resulting in the closure of the last deep coal mine, Kellingley, in December 2015. Whilst the strike divided our communities and our union, it also brought many of us together. One example of which, that should not be underestimated, was the Women Against Pig Closures movement. Originally formed to set up and run soup kitchens and support those on strike, it quickly transformed into something more. No longer supporting, but taking an active part. We shall never forget the vital part the Women Against Pig Closures played in the strike, and since. Many of our former mining communities continue to suffer from the pig closure programme today. They've never recovered from the loss of the jobs when the pits were closed, and the loss of future employment for our kids. Although some jobs have been created in the many warehouses that were built on former coal mining sites, they were not of the same quality. Our young cannot fulfil their potential on 0-hour contracts and minimum wage, or afford to buy or rent a home in the communities where they were brought up. To me, this is the Thatcher legacy and justifies the fact that we were right to stand up for what we believed in. Even today, we are still being subjected to a form of collective punishment in our pensions and denied justice from the Tory government's refusal to hold an inquiry into the policing at Orgreave. Both of these issues the NUM has continued, with others, to campaign to address. We now have a firm commitment in the Labour Party manifesto that they will right these injustices if elected into government. In respect of the Mine Workers Pension Scheme, the manifesto has agreed that the government will give back the investment reserve fund to the pension scheme so that it can be used to immediately increase pensions for our pensioners.
Can we clap at that point?
They will look into the 50-50 split, but you must remember that the NUM commissioned an actuarial report that was submitted to the base select committee, where we said that 90-10 was what we'd expect to pay, and that's the point. It wasn't a recommendation that we think the 50-50 should be changed to 90-10. It was an example of how unfair the 50-50 was, that if we'd have been covered by the PPF or been able to buy it out by an insurance company, we'd have only paid 10% of the surplus, not the 50% that they've taken. Given the National Policy Forum report, I'm confident that although the manifesto commits to a review of the 50-50 split, given that in the report it states that the Labour Party does not think that it's right for any government to profit from the mine workers' pensions, and that the pensions that we paid into should be used for ours, I'm quietly confident that we'll see an end to the 50-50 split, not just a change to a 90-10 or anything else. The commitment that we've got in the Labour Party manifesto can only be achieved if they win the election. I'm proud this evening to be speaking on the same platform as Matt Rack, General Secretary of the Fire Brigades Union and this year's TUC President. The FBU, along with many other trade unions, supported us during our strike. And following the Scottish Government's decision to offer a miner's pardon to those that were arrested during the strike, Matt contacted me with a view to the FBU and the NUM doing a joint campaign for the same in England. We all know that along with the police, the Thatcher government utilised the courts against us. Miners were arrested and charged with petty offences in order that they could be bound over and prevented from going on the picket lines. These offences should be pardoned. The NUM continues to support current and former members despite continued attacks from those who would like to succeed where Thatcher and the Tory government failed and closed down the NUM. We continue to support and obtain compensation for injury and disease caused through working in our mines. Accepting that we do not have the power and resources that we had 40 years ago, we continue to do what we can, where we can, for who we can. Whilst the strike is not something to be celebrated, it is something that we should commemorate. We can learn from the past to guard against repeating the mistakes in the future. We know better than most that we are stronger together, and those that seek to defeat us will continue to try to divide us. We can be rightly proud of the stance we took 40 years ago to defend our jobs, communities and trade union, that we stood together in the spirit of trade unionism and community to support each other. There is dignity in doing what is right, and that is what we did. I would like to end by thanking Alan and the Notts Area NUM for organising this 40th anniversary event, and hope everybody enjoys the evening. Thank you.